ways to get rid of them once you've got them. This is what we have out in the garden, and we label it. I had one friend that really worked with me with one of the schools, and she had a slug jug that she didn't have anything in it yet. It just had the salt water, and her sister was visiting her, and she thought it was water, and she almost drank it before my friend saw her and said, "Don't." So this is almost super saturated. The ratio is 1 part salt to 7 parts water. In our activity book, I think we say 8 cups of water to 1 1/8 cup of salt or something like that. And we just made it more simple. And so we said the ratio is 7 to 1. So some schools have a lot of African snails, and so they'll use a bucket. So just having that ratio, 7 to 1. And again, that's a great math thing for the kids. All right, the ratio is 7 to 1. What are you going to use, you know? Depending on what you have, will determine how big of a container you want. If you've got a lot of little guys, then you know you're good with something like this. A lot of times we use a mayonnaise jar like these on your table there. I'll go to Blaine's Drive-In, and usually for $0.25, you know, sometimes if I go, it's for the kids, they'll give them to me, but $0.25's not bad. And I like to have a couple of these in the garden. You know, up at Kanu, we had a whole bunch of them because we had so many snails going into them. So 7 to 1. And then something that you're going to use, and you know, we actually, with one of the schools, they were working out slug jug stations, because sometimes all of a sudden your tongs is gone, or where's the slug jug, or where's the this or that. So they were actually making slug jug stations and designing them and that kind of thing, of a place where you keep this, where this is, and everything's always there and you know where to go and get it. I've done it where I've tried to tie this on, which is a little awkward. We've also taped a little paper cup to the side, or a yogurt container or something to put it in. So, you know, again, just be creative, let the kids be creative. They do get stinky and gross, I'm not going to lie. They get really stinky and gross. At home, you can add a little bit of bleach. I'd like to ask the IPM guys for the school what substitute they use for bleach at schools, because we're not allowed to use bleach at schools. So is there something that we can add that's not bleach but like bleach, because it will really cut the smell and it allows you to use it longer.
Are you going to do it at home?
We should probably work that out, and I haven't. I just do that. but it would be good. In the lab, I believe we used a 10% bleach solution is what we're usually using. And there's a paper that gives it less than that. We tend to just go more because we're using it to disinfect. We're, you know, trying to make sure that we're not, you know, with DNA contamination and all that. So we use kind of a heavy bleach. We use about a 10% bleach solution when we're cleaning materials at the lab. In the slug jugs, I was using this size slug jugs, and I would just take and dump a little bleach in it. I didn't measure it out, and it would cut the smell like right away.
Okay, so the bleach kills the smell, not necessarily the slug.
Yeah, not necessarily the slug. The salt water, the salt will definitely kill the slug or snail. Like if you don't make it strong enough, I've had students say, well, they all crawled out. So you have to make it strong. It really does. It does kill the parasite as well. The other thing too, and I've noticed this in all my studies, is these parasites don't like anaerobic conditions. So in my Petri dishes, if they would get, like after the slug had been in there for a while in the water and I pulled a sample, they didn't like anaerobic conditions, and I would see that. We could make them right now. And so the thing that you want to do is you want to figure out, what do you want to put on it? Do you want to put the recipe on it? What do you want to do to warn people not, you know, like this is a slug jug. You know, you don't want to terrify people, but you don't want them messing around with it either. So we'll do this now. We've designed a slug jug. Chopsticks work as well, you know, if you don't, but these tongs you can buy at Long's for about $2. And so they're pretty cheap. That's my go-to source for these tongs. Some of the interesting things too, some of the studies that were done on the larvae itself, a couple of guys, Richard and Merritt, did a really, really interesting study back in 1971. And they looked at slugs that had gone into salt water, parasites that had gone into salt water, and they actually could live in salt water like the ocean, which is way less salty than this, for a couple of days. If they put them into fresh water, they would revive. So these parasites are really hardy. I was really shocked at how hardy they were. I had first stage larvae. I drowned slugs, and I was able to sort out first stage from third stage by running them through a 20 micron stainless sieve. I had first stage larvae that were alive for 56 days outside of the host. And when we ran PCR on them, they tested positive for rat lungworm. I should say too that the scientific name for rat lungworm is Angiostrongylus cantonensis. Canton was where Sun Yat-sen was from, and where he started the university was in Canton. At the time it was called Canton. So Chen, the man who first discovered and identified the rat lungworm, he named it Cantonensis because he was in Canton. So Angiostrongylus cantonensis is the name of the parasite. Angiostrongyliasis is the medical term for rat lungworm disease. It's quite a mouthful. Okay, emptying the jug. Depending on what island you live in, where you live, on Hawaii Island it's super easy for us because we say, this is like organic Roundup. It will kill your plants that you don't want. You know, salt water will kill your plants. So we say over there, we say, dump it in a rocky area or a place where you don't want any weeds or plants to grow. Dump it on your gravel driveway, and that works for us. Here in Oahu, it would be harder, you know, and so Lydia and Debbie and I have had this discussion quite a bit. I know that the health department said put it in a plastic bag and throw it in the garbage. If you live in an urban area, that might be what you've got to do. You know, I mean, really, literally, could you put it down a storm drain? You probably could, but this is kind of something that we're all sort of working out. Like, what is the best thing to do with it? It's really hard for me to think about throwing stuff in the garbage that has a lot of liquid and stuff like that and smelly things in it, but maybe, yes. The whole thing. So when we get one of these and it's full and it's really gross and it's like, okay, we just need to redo it. We just open it up and we dump the whole thing. After I add the last one, I wait a week. And that's why I like to have more than one of these, because I'll just let it sit, you know, and I know in the lab we've looked and I've seen them die under salt water and we've seen them die under anaerobic conditions, but it's just like, you know, let's just let them sit in there for a week and then I dump it out and I feel safe. So I usually have more than one of these going on. Make them for your house too. I always have one of these at home. You know, and actually right now in California, because most of our slugs are really little, I just have a cup and I put salt in it and I throw them right in there. So if you've got really little guys, that's a possibility, but you get a big African snail and you're gonna go through a lot of salt trying to kill them. So, you know, you kind of have to adapt it to fit your situation. We had one school that was a place of refuge and they were not allowed to kill anything. They couldn't trap rats, they couldn't kill snails or slugs, and so I took them off campus. We would put them in our slug jug with no salt or anything in it, and I would take them off campus. And I put them in my freezer. So you could take something like this if you really had a hard time with the saltwater solution and getting rid of it and you didn't have huge amounts or whatever, put them in something like this and put it in your freezer. One of our guys was really concerned about gases building up and like blowing the lid off. And so I never had that happen. I mean, we would put 500 snails in a jar like that and I never had it blow up. But you could also leave it a little loose. You know, they were saying, well, we have to drill a hole in the top of each one. And I said, you know, then that means you got to go get a drill. And it makes me think that it would slow down. It might deter people from something that is much more easier than just having this. Now I got to drill a hole in it too, you know. So I've never had one explode. I don't like the thought of liquid getting out of the top. It's not like I'm going to be doing this, but it's kind of up to you. But I've never had one build up enough gases. And then too, with the African snails, Donna Mitz over on our island, the school garden coordinator there, she uses a 5-gallon bucket and she just puts the lid on so it's loose. It's not snapped on tight. And so any gases are going to go out. So yeah, decorate your jugs and then we'll take a look at them.